Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the weekly live Dattitude broadcast, episode number 145. It's a good Friday, April 7th. I'm Jim Derry, along with Rod Walker, sports columnist at the Times-Picayune and the Advocate, and we're here to talk about the Pelicans and the Saints and some breaking news this morning, although it's not a surprise to anyone. Rod Walker, how are you doing this morning? We'll get to the news in just a minute. I want to find out about you right now.
I'm doing good, man. It's, busy time as always in this city when it comes to sports.
Never ends, does it?
Never ends, man. I was thinking about last night how especially NFL, you think about the off season and they're just really not winning anymore. They've sort of made it a 12-month-a-year cycle, man. It's just crazy.
I know. It's, and when I got in this business for the first 10 or so years, I've been doing it. This is my 33rd year, something like that. And when I first got in the business as an ag clerk, from about May to June to May to the end of July, there was nothing. Yeah. I mean, that's when you take your vacation. There's nothing going on now.
Yeah. Now you're trying to squeeze a vacation in somewhere.
Wherever you can find it. That's what you do. All right, let's look at our topics this morning, what we're going to be talking about. And obviously, we're going to be talking about the Pelicans mostly. Of course, we're going to dive into the Saints at the very end there. But as far as the Pelicans go, I put this graphic together before we found out some news this morning. But it's still true. The final picture should be clear in just a bit as the Pels take on the Knicks tonight. Final regular season home finale against the New York Knicks before they travel to play Minnesota on Sunday to end the regular season. And then as far as the Saints are going, we'll be talking about what position should they be looking at. I think I'm in disagreement with most of my colleagues, which I guess isn't always a bad thing. I was in agreement with them when it came to what their final record would be, and I was wrong. We were all wrong about that. And then the Hendon Hooker visit, does it actually mean anything? We'll talk about that with Rod in just a little bit. But again, if you want to bring in your comments or questions, and we got already Jerry saying hello. Jerry's always with us, Rod. He's a regular with us over here, so we appreciate him. Poppy showing up as well. Hello to you guys. Comments and questions till about 9:50 to 10 o'clock, just kind of depending on when we run through. All right, Rod, the first thing I want to talk about is the Pelicans and some breaking news this morning from Shams over at The Athletic talking about, it's not really a surprise, but his news is that Zion will definitely not be ready for the play-in. We'll see what happens if they were to make it advance past the play-in into the playoffs, but I don't think anyone can be surprised that Zion is not going to be ready this coming week or so, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, if you asked me that maybe a week ago, I think there was some optimism that perhaps he would come back, either tonight or against the Timberwolves. And we weren't really sure because we just haven't heard a whole lot. But just kind of the way things are playing out, and this team is so typically, like, they have a game on Sunday in Minnesota. Typically, they would practice here on Saturday and then fly out to Minnesota. But this time they're actually flying up to Minnesota and practicing up there. So some of us were starting to think, okay, maybe that means that, they're just going to let Zion go through a really rough, tough practice in Minnesota and then play on Sunday. But looks like that's not going to be the case. And, David Griffin put out a statement on Thursday. My days mixed up.
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, put out a statement yesterday. And in that statement, I noticed that he mentioned the word conditioning. So I just kind of wonder if this is like if he's healthy but just not in condition to run yet. So I just thought it was kind of interesting that he did have that word in the statement. So I do think Zion is probably close. I think if this team could somehow get through the play-in tournament, if that's the route they have to take, which it looks more likely right now. I think if they do that, I think there's a good chance that perhaps they can get them in the first round series, but who knows? We've been saying that we've been doing this. We've been doing this 2 week at a time thing since January. So who knows?
Well, I was talking to my son this morning, and one of the things that I see is that for the last, I'll say, month or so, it seems like they're playing like they played last year when they knew that he wasn't coming back. They're playing like they expect him not to come back. Like, you know what? We're gonna. I joked with Zach the other day. To hell with you, Joe Boo. I do this myself. I mean, that's kind of how they're playing right now. I mean, they're playing like, all right, we're not gonna have Zion. We just got to do what we got to do. We can't count on him, and they can play without him.
Yeah, I mean, they won 8 out of the last 10 games. So I mean, you have to be impressed with that. You do think they can win without him, but I don't think this team makes a deep playoff run without him. In fact, I don't even know if they get out of the first round without him. But I think they can, maybe do what they did last year, and if they get the right matchup, perhaps they can do without him. But I just don't know if they can. And I think I always ask myself, like, would the fans have been better off hearing in let's just say January that, hey, Zion's out for the year? Or do you think it's better to keep stringing the fans along? And I don't know. I think either way you go, I think the fans are going to be disappointed. So it's just a little – instead of getting that one stab, now you're just getting poked with the needle every 2 weeks.
I know, and it's kind of sad in a way. But I mean, look, I've been talking about this for a few weeks now. I think it's unfair to label him as this, you don't know what he is. He's 22 years old. I mean, we can't be putting labels on this kid, in my opinion, especially the B word. People calling him a bust already. I mean, It's not like Michael Thomas, who's 30 years old. That's a completely – and first of all, Michael Thomas played for 5 years, so you can't call him a bust either. I mean, he's got NFL records, for God's sake. But when you talk about Zion, we still don't know what he's going to be. Well, he can't stay healthy. He's proven. We don't know if he can stay healthy. We don't know anything. Just because it's happened – this early in his career, the dude still could be the stud that everybody thinks he's going to be.
Yeah, and we've seen how the stud that he can be. I mean, this team was in at the top of the Western Conference back in December because of Zion. I mean, he was the reason for that. I always go back and, you look back at Joel Embiid's first at this point in his career. Embiid missed 114 games at this point. Zion has missed only 90. I'm saying only 94. But he's missed 94 games at this point in their career. So, I mean – yeah, I just think it's too early to be writing him off. We've seen how good he is. And, there are always those people that are saying, oh, he didn't want to be here, get rid of him. But he wants to be here. I mean, he signed the extension. We saw the stuff that he did last offseason, just kind of showing his appreciation for the city of New Orleans. And I just think he just had some bad luck. And I think when you look at him and his body type, and I mean, you see how explosive he is on the court. I think he's a different kind of person. And when it comes to like injuries, and we just have to sort of see how he's going to be able to navigate his way through this. But I mean, every indication that he wants to be here, he wants to play. He hates sitting on the bench and, having to do this, but it's, they're thinking long term, and you want to make sure he's healthy when he does.
And people say, how long can you just keep, doing this and like waiting to see and just put him, if you put him out there, who knows, maybe he tears the hamstring and he's not even ready for training camp next year. So you have to think about that, and that's where they are and where this team is. And even with him there, it's not like at this point, I think they can be NBA champion caliber, but they're not going to be that this year, even with him. So take your, it's not like you need to rush him out there and see, but it's a shame that we have to talk about that to start, but that is the breaking news of the morning in case you haven't seen it.
And I do think, Jim, I mean, I think if you go through this again in year 4, I think at that point you might start to be a little bit more concerned. You have to go through this again.
Sure.
I think at some point you have to say, okay, that's it. Just like you mentioned Michael Thomas. I mean, I think if he goes to the same thing next year where he's not playing, I think yes, okay, that's enough. We've tried this and it's just not working. But right now,
it's a little different though with Michael Thomas though, because he's no longer kind of the face.
Right.
I mean, obviously before he had Drew Brees and he didn't need to be the face, but he kind of going in, he was going to be the face of the franchise going forward on offense, right? And then he just disappeared. So now we don't know what he is, but he doesn't have to be that anymore.
Right.
But so, that's we'll get to the Saints in a little bit. But look, I want to talk about the team itself in the playoffs or play-in. That's one of our lead questions here. And, Rod, if you look at what this team has done as of late, and I think, what is it now? 7 of the last 9 that they've won.
I think it's 8 out of 10, isn't it?
Oh, is it 8 out of 10 now? Okay, so if you look at this Wednesday game, I mean, to me, it's the craziest game of the season. It comes the third to last game of the season. But, down by 17. They were up by 17 against Golden State and lose. They kind of looked like what Golden State did to them, don't you think? In this Memphis game, that last 5 seconds aside, they look like a team that can beat almost anyone.
Yeah, man. They had that. It was like I think it was 3 minutes and 4 seconds. I can't remember. They knocked down 7 threes during that one stretch. The Smoothie King Center was as loud as I've probably heard it all season. other than maybe that Phoenix Suns game, back in, I guess that was December. But the place was just really electric and had a playoff atmosphere. And they played really, really well. I mean, Herb Jones scores 35 points.
Wow. Where did that come from?
Man, I mean, nobody. Yeah, I mean, Herb. It didn't happen. This team's had 7 different guys score 35 points this season. I think only 3 other teams have ever done that. You have to go back to like the Supersonics in 1971, and I think the Toronto team did it a couple of years back. But that's really impressive to have to have that 7 different guys to be able to hit that many points in a season. And this team just have a lot of weapons, and still don't have Jose back. But this is a team that when they're playing like that, they're hard to beat, especially at home. I mean, they can be really good at home.
1971, that's even before my time. And that's how long ago that is. I mean, so we're talking way back. Look, but if you talk about whether to make the playoffs and play-ins, and if you look at the standings here, the teams on the left side, the 4 teams there, they're locked into their seeds. They're not going anywhere. Denver, Memphis, Sacramento, Phoenix. I think there's a small sliver of a chance Memphis and Sacramento could swap spots because Sacramento owns a tiebreaker, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So Denver, Memphis, Sacramento, and Phoenix are tied into there. And you got the Clippers and Golden State, which are the likely 5 and 6s. We don't know the order yet because they're tied. But still, Lakers and Pelicans both with a chance to get directly into the playoffs. How important is it, and what kind of realistic chance do you think that the Pelicans could actually get to the 5 or 6 spot?
Yeah, I don't think 5 or 6 is likely. I was looking at I don't have the schedules in front of me, but just looking at who the Clippers and Warriors play, I just don't think. I mean, because you're going to kind of need them to lose. And and the Pelicans do have a tiebreaker over them, but and I do think the Pelicans can win both of their games, but I just think the Clippers and Golden State are going to really be playing hard, and it may be hard for them to slip up. And
Clippers have Portland tomorrow night and Phoenix on Sunday, and the Warriors have they're at Sacramento tonight, at Portland on Sunday, and Sacramento will be playing their players. They're not locked into that. They can still get to the 2 seed, so they should be playing. Then the Lakers are playing against the Suns on Suns tonight and against Utah on Sunday. Yeah,
and the Suns, the Suns are locked in. They're not. Nobody can jump the Suns, so I don't see the Lakers. They're
not going to play.
Yeah, I know Kevin Durant was talking last night, and they asked him would he play, because it's weird. He hasn't played against LeBron since Christmas of 2018, and it could be the first time they played each other. And I don't think he's going to play tonight either. So they probably won't see each other. So I just think I think it's a lot of work for the Pelicans to jump into the actual playoffs, but they've assured themselves at least a top 9 spot, which guarantees you at least 1 home game in the play-in. So that's a good thing for them.
Well, here's the thing. And I don't know that people understand it because I had to go back and look about a week ago to make sure that I was right. But when it comes to the play-in, which is, there's about a 90% chance that the Pelicans are going to be in the play-in and not the playoffs. Okay, so you have to play your way into the playoffs, which is what that is. So there's a huge difference, Rod, between 7, 8, 9. They're not going to be 10, so we don't have to worry about 10. But, to me, there's probably a 60 to 70% chance at this point that they're going to be in the 8.
Right.
You have to win out to get that. And what that means is the 8 travels to play the 7, and which in this case is looking like the Lakers. So you go play the Lakers, and then if you win that game, you're in the playoffs and you play the 2 seed in the series. If you lose, you get to play at home against the 9-10 winner, which the Pels were, I believe, the 9 last year.
Right.
So you get to go home and play that 9-10 winner, and then if you win that one, you go play the 1 seed. If you lose, you're out. So, I mean, that's kind of where the Pels are right now, and that's what they have to be looking at, and realistically, that's what they are. But, man, it's making that Golden State game look even more important because had they won that game right now, they would be sitting at number 5.
Right. The good thing about 8, though, I mean, you do get 2 chances. You can lose this against 7 and then still come back and win and get in the playoffs. I think, to me, the worst case scenario for the Pelicans would be to be 8, have to go to LA, which will be a hard game to win. And then you really don't want to see Dallas, because right now Dallas is 11. And let's say they sneak in and get that 10 spot. I don't know if you want to play the Lakers on the road and then have to come back and possibly play Dallas with Luka and Kyrie in a win or go home game. I mean, those are just kind of guys you'd rather stay away from. So I think if you're a Pelicans fan, you really need to be rooting for OKC to get that.
Yeah, a little Thunder. Let's go Thunder.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I think you just like your chances better with them, and they're a good team too. I mean, they're dangerous, and I think for the Pelicans, I think we're talking about that 8 spot, but I think it could very well come down to that Minnesota game on Sunday night. I mean, I think the winner of that could end up being
absolutely
8, and the loser probably ends up being 9.
Well, the winner of that game, if they were to end up tied, so in other words, if the Pels were to lose tonight and the Timberwolves play San Antonio, they're most likely going to win that game tomorrow night. It would be a big surprise if they don't win that game. Right. So if the Pels were to lose to the Knicks tonight and the Timberwolves win tomorrow night, then it comes down to those two playing. The Pels own the tiebreaker if they win. The Timberwolves own the tiebreaker if they win. So really, it would come down to that game. So although tonight is important, if you want to have any chance at the playoffs, and as far as where you go in the play-in, it probably doesn't matter. But for what it's worth, the Knicks have a lot of injuries there, and the Pelicans are 9 point. Well, they don't necessarily have a lot of injuries. They have a lot of players that are going to be sitting because they're
locked in as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the Pels are, when I looked this morning, are 9-point favorites. So they have the Pels probably have an excellent chance to win tonight, although they had an excellent chance to beat the Kings because the Kings were sitting some players too. But anyway, Brian Smith, I see your question about the Saints. We're going to get to the Saints in just a little bit. We want to finish talking about the Pelicans first. A couple more minutes on that. Rod, before we switch over topics, I just want to get your thoughts on this team, and let's assume Zion doesn't play, okay? Because I think that's where we are right now. And you talk about we don't know when or if Jose is going to come back. I think there's a different team with Jose, by the way. I think he really makes a difference. But we know we know they can't play like they played in the second half the other night against Memphis. They just can't do that. I mean, that's not realistic. So where do you see this team? You talk about how going to LA is going to be tough because the Lakers are playing different kind of basketball right now. Let's be realistic and assume that's probably what's going to happen. The Pelicans are probably going to go to LA and play the Lakers in the play-in game. If they were to lose that, they're probably going to be home against either the Timberwolves or the Mavericks, or they have to go to the Timberwolves. So what is your outlook? Where do you see this team going?
They would have to play that game here regardless if you're the 8th. So if
you're the they'll get one. If you're the 9, 8, or the 9, you're guaranteed at least one home play-in / playoff game. Yeah, okay. But so, what is your forecast as far as what you see?
I do think this team gets into the playoffs. I think they're good enough to do that because of the fact they would have a game at home. And I think if it's a win or go home game, I like their chances against OKC or Minnesota. Again, I wouldn't want to play the Mavericks in a go home game because I just know how Luka and Kyrie can be in that kind of situation, and they'd be so desperate. And I'm sure some calls may not. Not that I think anything is rigged, but I do think I think Luka gets.
It's okay. You can say it if you think it is. I mean, this is the show where we give our opinions. Okay. I mean, if you think something isn't kosher or whatever, you say it here, Rod.
I won't get fined, huh?
You will not get fined here on Dattitude. There's no fine zone.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the NBA would rather see.
Okay.
They'd rather see Luka and Kyrie in the playoffs than
I've said it before.
And a Pelicans team without Zion. So maybe Griffin should come out and say, "Hey, Zion's playing," and then we'll get the Pelicans in the playoffs. So they'll get some favorable calls. So, but yeah, I think the Pelicans could win at home in a elimination game, and you look at it. I know everybody was saying, they need to be the 6th seed so you can play Sacramento in the playoffs because everybody thought that was a favorable matchup. I don't know if that's really as favorable as you think. I mean, you saw the game the other night.
To me, it's more favorable than Memphis and Denver.
Yeah,
especially Memphis. This team, and I know they won. They found a way to win but with Ja in there, I mean, this team does the Pels match up with a lot of teams, but they don't match up with Memphis. Period.
They don't match up with Memphis, and
they just don't.
Yeah. And I think Sacramento, I mean, obviously, if they could have got the 6th spot, that would have been ideal because Sacramento doesn't have the playoff experience. But I think that Denver team is a team that, I mean, you think eventually Denver's going to get over the hump and get, and do really well. And if they're healthy, they're really good. But I don't think that matchup is as scary
So
as.
you'd rather Denver out of the
No,
top
I'd rather Sacramento for sure.
Okay.
But I think Denver would be my second choice over Memphis, and I know you don't normally say that about a 1 seed, but I just think Memphis is a really tough matchup for this team.
Well, I have I got Sacramento about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was going through the futures. I couldn't believe that the Kings, they were, I mean, even then to me they were kind of locked into the 3. They've been locked into the 3 for like a month now.
Yeah.
And they were still 75-1 to win the title. Now, I know that they're not likely to win the title, but the way they play offense, who knows if they catch fire. To me, 75-1 was ridiculous. I think now it's down to like 35-1 or 40-1, but still, if you're looking for a bargain, I mean, to me, that's the bargain. I mean, the Kings, they're going to be the 3 seed, for God's sake, in the West, and they're still hovering around 30 to 35-1. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Was that to win the whole thing or just to win the West?
To win the whole thing. So to win the West, there was something, I think it was like, now, back then I could have got him at like 35-1 or something, which is probably what I should have done instead of being greedy. Yeah. But I think now they're like 15 or 16-1 to win the West.
Okay.
So, but I did put a little something on Memphis. So I have Memphis is still 15-1 to win it all, and I think like Memphis is a legit team to win it all. I think Memphis can play with anyone.
I think so too. I think if I was betting some money on this, though, and I was asked this on another show the other day, and they asked me who I have in the finals, and I went with Phoenix and Milwaukee. I just think,
but that's the bet in favor. There's no value.
Yeah,
no
right.
Value there.
Right.
You know,
I mean, this wasn't a betting show. This was just like,
right. Of course.
Win. So I just think those two teams are probably the best. Just as far as just a total roster with some experience and just the pieces that you kind of need. And I think I'd pick Milwaukee to win it all. I just think they're. Really.
And I don't think you could go wrong there. Actually, if you asked me who I thought was going to win it all, it's in Milwaukee too. But and again, this isn't technically a betting podcast, although we do throw. I'm a sports betting writer, for God's sake. I got to throw betting numbers in there, and the numbers on the Bucks, I think they were plus 290 as of last night. So you can't bet that. I mean, if you play this out, if you played out the entire playoffs 3 times, would they win once? Maybe. But I think I'd rather bet Memphis. So if you played this thing out 15 times, would they win once? I'd say almost definitely. So that's just my opinion. So I think you're just getting better value there. But anyway, the Pels by the way, are something like 65-1. If you played this NBA tournament out 60 times in hyperspace with these same guys, Rod, did the Pelicans win the NBA championship 1 time out of 60?
Without Zion, I don't think so, man.
No.
I think that road would be too rough. I mean, they're probably not gonna have home court advantage in any series. I mean, and this is a team that hasn't played particularly well on the road. So I just don't know if they'd have the pieces to win it all. And I don't even know if they have the pieces to win the West without Zion. I just think he's that important. And you throw him in the mix, that changes my answer totally.
That is completely a different team. There's no doubt. All right, let's. We have discussed the Pelicans again. Big game tonight against the Knicks. Regular season home finale. If they win both of these games, if they beat the Knicks tonight, if they beat the Knicks tonight and they win at Minnesota on Sunday, they are guaranteed to have a postseason game in the Smoothie King Center, whether it be as the 7th seed, the 6th seed, the 7th seed, or the 8th seed. Because if they win both, they can be no lower than 8. Which is where they are right now.
But even with the 9, though, I mean, like I said, with the 9,
you still get you still get a game at home.
Yeah.
Which would be Tuesday night or Wednesday night. I can't remember.
It would be Thursday. I think the 7 and 8 in both conferences play on Tuesday.
Yeah, and the 9-10 plays Wednesday.
Play Wednesday, and then
the playoffs start. Yeah, the playoffs start right after that. All right, well, we'll see what happens with the Pelicans. I personally think that I think they're pretty much locked into the 8. I think that's what they're going to be. I think they're going to win both of these games. I think they're going to win both tonight and on Sunday. And I know playing at Minnesota is not easy, and they've had troubles there. But I think they're playing well enough right now, and I think they have a lot of confidence, and I think they're going to look at Sunday as a game that they have to have, and they're going to play well. So I don't know what the line's going to be on that game yet. It's not out, but it'll be close. Minnesota will probably be a very, very slight favorite, is my guess, somewhere around 2-point favorite. But I think the Pelicans are going to win the game. We'll see. All right, let's move on. Go ahead.
I said they could win that. They could win that game Sunday and have to go straight from Minnesota
Yeah.
I have to fly to LA and play Tuesday. You know, it can be like a really quick trip. So
that's kind of brutal.
Yeah, you could almost lose Sunday. Not that you would ever try to lose because you want to have those 2 shots at making the playoffs. But I mean, you could lose Sunday and get an extra day of rest, come home and play on Wednesday against whoever.
Well, the problem is because the Lakers, again, we talked about it. They play Phoenix tonight and they play Utah on Sunday. Both of them are at home. I mean, you because you don't own the tiebreaker with the Lakers. Not only do you need to win out, you need them to lose one of those games that Phoenix doesn't care. They're locked in the 4. They're probably going to sit half their team, which, by the way, that's a story for the offseason, we need to talk about. I think it's absurd. The NBA, Zach and I got into this long text message thread last night. Again, I don't want my ADHD to appear again here on a Friday morning, but the NBA's got to do something about just being able to sit players whenever you want. I get it's the end of the season, and I'm not have as big of a problem with that, but like, what are we going to do about the NBA just sitting stars on the second night of a back-to-back and all that? But we got to do something about that.
Well, I think the new collective bargaining agreement where they're trying to make guys have to play 65 games to win MVP. That's to win any of those postseason awards. I think that's going to help hopefully.
But that's only going to affect like 4 or 5 players. I mean, there's only legitimately 4 or 5 players that are going to be in the conversation for MVP.
Yeah,
I think they ought to have something
awards too, though. I mean, there are other awards, and all defensive team. I mean, you have to, play. I don't know if it's for that team or not, but I know it's all NBA and there's some of the other awards. So.
Well, to me, they ought to hold part of everyone's salary, like 3%. I just make up a number. I don't care what it doesn't have to be big, 2%, 3%, whatever it is, and it sits in a fund. And if you play 72 games, you get that 3%. If you don't play 72% that game, it goes to the charity of your choice. How about that?
Yeah, or you could reimburse the fans who came to see.
Reimburse the fans. I like that even better. I think that's an even better idea.
Every time
give a gift to the media. How about that? Yeah. What do we think?
I don't think Steph Curry's played in the Smoothie King Center.
Been a while.
He didn't play this year. I don't know if he even played last year. I talked to some parents who brought their kids just to see Steph, and they were like,
"Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You can't just sit them whenever you want." So I think again, I'm not saying it has to be 72 games, and I'm 3% sounds maybe a little much, but in the grand scheme of things, to them, it's not that much. I mean, you or I, $100,000. I mean, you could just bury me in a hole tomorrow and let my kids have the house. You take the $100,000 out of the house and bury me in a hole, and they can have whatever's left. I mean, but to them, that's pocket change, right? I don't know. That's a lot of money to anybody, I guess. All right, let's move on to the Saints. And as we look towards the NFL draft, which is 3 weeks from last night, that's when it begins. The first round is on a Thursday in Kansas City this year. I was able to be at last year's in Vegas. I couldn't talk them into going to Kansas City. Rod, have you been to Kansas City? I would imagine you have.
I have. The Saints played the Chiefs there maybe, I don't even know if McCombs was quarterbacking then. I don't know whenever the last time the Saints played it.
I don't remember the last time they've been at Arrowhead.
Yeah, and I don't
it's
even.
Been a while.
I'm not really good at remembering.
No, because the last time they played the Chiefs Breeze was still on the team. They had that wild game in the Dome that kind of went back and forth. The Chiefs won by 3, and the only reason why I remember that it was by 3 is because they were 3-point favorites. It was a push, and the Chiefs had lost like 8 games in a row against the spread. So I remember that they played that one to a push. So that's the only reason why I remember that score.
Was that 19?
That was Breeze's last season, right? So 20? Was it 20? Was it the COVID year?
Breeze's last season was 20.
20.
Which means they would have played in Kansas City like in 16.
So 16, 17, 18. Yeah, 16.
Yeah. So that's when it was. Yeah.
All right.
I remember nothing about the game at all.
And I don't either. I don't remember the last time they played at Arrowhead. They have no recollection. I'm sure I could find it in 5 seconds, but I have no recollection of Kansas City. But, I'm always, there aren't a ton of major cities that I haven't been to. Kansas City's one of them. I would have liked to go there. I heard the ribs are wonderful. I heard the barbecue is great.
Yeah, we had barbecue. I don't know if you remember Herbie, but he used to cover.
Of course, Herbie Ethiopia.
Yeah. He had covered Kansas City before, and actually he's back covering them now. But he showed us around. He was he was covering the Saints at the time, but he knew all the Saints to go to, so he took us to some really popular barbecue place there, and Had a good time. And I remember Arrowhead being loud. You know, you always hear about how loud it is, and it was pretty loud, especially for an outdoor stadium. So I do remember that.
They've had a lot to cheer about over there, and now they're going to have the NFL draft there in Kansas City. I wonder when it's going to come to New Orleans. It's got to, right? It's got to come. If they're going to move it around, I think it's got to come to New Orleans.
It's always during Jazz Fest, though, so I don't know if.
Oh, that's true.
I just don't know if you can make it happen logistically, but I mean, this city, you know, they probably could make it happen, but
I think they got to find a way.
I'd find some hotel rooms, and it'd just be a lot.
That's true. It would be tough. Well, I'll tell you one thing about the draft. It was my the first time I'd ever been to a draft, and being there, and the first night I was there, standing outside in Vegas, and I think that within the first hour, I'm not exaggerating, within the first hour I was there, I probably saw 25 different team jerseys there. Yeah. And by the end of the first full day, I had seen all 32. So, I mean, it was crazy. And just talking to different – one of the things that's great about going to the draft is just talking to different people from everywhere.
Yeah.
And the different fans, and everybody's – now, they're not always cool, and when you go to their home venue, try to talk – you know, if a Saints fan tries to go to Philly, they're not necessarily going to be cool to you there.
Right.
But if you're in a setting where everybody's fans are together, they're kind of cool. So, yeah. I mean, you know, that was kind of a highlight in being able to talk to all these different people. But
that's funny you did that, because when the Saints went to London this past year and played the Vikings, I remember before the game, you know, we got to the stadium early and we just said, okay,
lots of jerseys.
Yeah, we said let's see if we can find at least one of every jersey, and it took us like 10 minutes maybe. I mean, they were just
it's insane.
Yeah, it's
for
insane
those kind of events.
Yeah.
But and then the draft, I tell you, we spent the first part of the first night in the media room, but when you go to them, and then we couldn't get any internet reception in there. We actually had to go back to our hotel. But when you walk into the media room, at least in Vegas, and you walk through this certain spot, you can see down this bridge where everyone is, and it's just this mass of humanity. I mean, it is, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of people, but look, and I've lived in New Orleans my entire life. I ride in Endymion. You make the turn from Carrollton on the canal, and you see this throng. It was kind of like that. I mean, you turn from Carrollton on the canal, and you see nothing but people, and that's really what it kind of was at the draft. And I'm like, how did they even hear anything or see anything back here?
Right.
But you know, it's the people that go. So yeah, I think you're right about the Jazz Fest part of it. Maybe that would prohibit the draft from being here in New Orleans, but it is an experience. It's not just about the NFL has done it. They've been ingenious about the whole thing, really. When it comes to the NFL draft, I mean, they have marketed everything to the T. And you know, Zach was saying not everybody likes the draft. I said I don't think that's the case anymore. Like, I never cared about the draft all that much, even like 10 years ago. And now it's a big deal for me, and I'm about to start doing my own mock drafts, or at least mock positioning drafts. It's just insane what we all have to do now.
It is, man. I don't really get into the draft until like around this time is when I kind of really started looking. But I mean, there are people who've been looking since college football season ended, and I'm always just doing some other stuff too, so it's a little harder for me to dive in like most people. But I'm about to turn that corner and get into it as well. Yeah,
well, all right. We got a couple. One comment, one question that I need to show. James asked, I don't know if you're asking for Pels talk, but we just spent 30 minutes talking about the Pelicans, so you can either slide that little button backwards and hear what Rod and I had to say about the Pels, or you can wait till we're done and you can hear it on demand. By the way, everyone, when we're done with this live portion of the show, like I do every Friday, I go and record my monologue and attach it to this interview and post it, and you can find it wherever you find your podcast. All major platforms, Dattitude can be found, and you know, my monologue is, I know you don't want to hear me talk. You can just fast forward and hear Rod again. That's fine. You can do that. Brian Smith asked, is Coach O a Saint? That was an April Fool's joke, my friend. Coach O is not coaching the Saints. I know there were some pictures out there and all this fun stuff, but that was just fun. It was April Fool's joke. Coach O is not coaching the Saints. My son got all excited. First of all, I love Coach O. He's been nothing but nice to me. I covered his sons playing ball for a few years, and again, nothing but nice to me. But I'm not sure why fans. My son's like all thrilled. I heard Coach O's going to be the co-defensive coordinator, and I'm like, no, I don't know where you heard. It's all over Twitter. I'm like, it's not true. So, anyway, we'll see what Coach. I think Coach O's pretty happy laying around on a beach somewhere with a woman much younger than him. Let's put it that way. He's probably enjoying. I mean, you would enjoy your time, right, Rod? Is that what I mean, All right, let's talk about.
I'm not touching that, Jim.
Yeah, I know. I'm throwing out the bait, and you're not taking it. Damn it! All right, let's move on and talk about the Saints themselves and what we think they're eyeing. And I saw the roundtable. There was a roundtable on NOLA.com. I don't know if it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, with all the Saints writers and the columnists, and talking about what position we think that the Saints might be going for. And I know Zach Ewing feels this way, and I know the vast majority of mock drafts feel this way. And the first thing I see is defensive linemen. And I think you were kind of forced to pick last, so you were just talking about defensive linemen as well. But I just think, Rod, that this team, with where they are, and they invested all this money in Derek Carr, to me, I think you need to go offense, and it's either running back, because we don't know what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara. I mean, he's going to miss 6 to 8 games at a minimum, and there's a chance that he really doesn't play much of the season at all. So you're leaving Jamal Williams on an island, who you just get. So to me, running back is the most important position. Second most would be offensive lineman, because even if you think you have 5 starters up front, you can never have enough depth. And with all the money you've invested in Derek Carr, so to me, those are the 2 positions that I'd be looking at first.
Yeah, I put I think on mine in the round table, I think I did say that I said defensive line would be my first choice, but I actually went to linebacker second, just because they lost Caden Ellis and DeMario's getting, DeMario's 34, and I mean Pete Werner had a good solid season last year. So I put linebacker up there too, but I think, to me, and those are the 3 positions for me: defensive line, running back, and linebacker. And as far as a running back, I think I agree with you. I mean, I think this Alvin Kamara thing is probably going to hit a little harder than people are expecting. You almost kind of wish they had, when the way last season went, you wish they had kind of got that suspension out of the way so
right.
He could be this year. But obviously it didn't work out that way. But yeah, I mean, if he misses a big chunk of the season, you really need to have a guy, somebody other than Jamal Williams. And I think just having watched Tajay Spears a lot this season, I was a really big fan of his. And
I never got a fan of his for a long time, since before I never got Tulane.
I never got a chance to see him at Ponchatoula. I think I may have asked you or somebody before. I was like, was he really this good at Ponchatoula? And they were like, yeah, he was.
He was phenomenal.
I never got a chance to see him, but he is a really good player. And, if the Saints can get him, I know that, I guess the big, you got some people that like him and some people that like Bijan Robinson from Texas. But, I think both of those are really dynamic running backs, and they're going to help a team.
James Riley says Gibbs from Alabama, the next but faster Reggie Bush, bringing back the short passing game, opens up everything else. Kind of why I like Tajay if you can get him later on. But I agree with you, and I think that the Saints kind of need to get back to that, the little scat back pass. And Kamara, to me, has had to do so much by himself as of late, Rod, the last 2 years without Drew Brees, that they haven't been able to use him kind of in that capacity. He's had to be a power back and a speed back all in one, which worries me, not only because he's going to miss time because of whatever league discipline he faces, but because he's got wear and tear on him. He's about to be 30 years old. He's about to hit that running back plateau age. So to me, Alvin Kamara is not going to be able to do what he was doing anyway.
Anyway, right.
Even more a reason to go draft a young running back like that. And I think they need to do it early rather than later.
I guess my only thing is, we've seen over the past few years how undervalued these running backs are. And, I think you get away with getting one at, I think you can bypass running back at pick 29 and wait until pick 40. But I mean, you have to kind of have to see
on who's there.
Right. Depends on who's
Bijan Robinson is still sitting around at 29. You can't pass him up.
Right. You have to get right. I think you have to get him in that case. Yeah.
And I think it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen. If you look at all the mock drafts, it's probably not going to happen, but I think it's possible. We've seen running backs the first running back go until the last pick. You talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire didn't go to to the Chiefs until the last pick of the first round a couple years ago. So, I mean, running backs are not the same kind of priority that they've been throughout when we were younger,
Right. And I just think if you get to 29 and, if Robinson and Spears are all on the board, though, I mean, do you go ahead and grab one, or do you say, you know what, I think one of these guys will be here 11 picks later, or what do you? I mean, to me, I think that's when it
depends on if there are
like
3 there, then maybe you take the chance.
Yeah.
If there are only 2 there, I think you have to take
one.
one.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I just think that's the biggest need for this team.
Yeah.
That's what we think they need. What do you think the team is thinking? I mean, it's so hard. There may not be a harder team other than the Patriots to try to put your head inside the head of, if that makes any sense. I mean, trying to read the mind of Mickey Loomis and company is harder than any other team except for Bill Belichick and company. I mean, the Saints keep their hand closer to the vest than anyone. But with that being said, what do we think that they're thinking? And Dunk always talks about they pick best player available over position. And I think that's because they have their board set up with the positions that they need.
Yeah, man, I still think defensive line is probably their priority, just because, I mean, you look at what this team lost and losing Shy Tuttle and David Onyemata. I mean, I think, and Marcus Davenport. I mean, you want to look at Spence. I think that's a big chunk of what this defense was last year. And I just think, to me, that's the biggest hole on this team. And I think that's probably the priority. If I had to just say, okay, this is what they got to do, I think that's what I would probably go with. But I do think that, if they have Bijan Robinson higher than any of the defensive linemen and he's there, I think they do go after him. I just think, because I don't think the holes on this team are so big that you just have to, be desperate and just grab whoever's out there. So I do think they'll get, I'm agreeing with Jeffrey. I think they will get the best player, I think, just because I think they can afford to do that. I don't think the holes are that big. And again, you got another pick, 11 picks later at 40. So I just think you probably can still find a decent, whatever position it is at that point.
And then, before we go off here, and again, this will be your final chance to get any comments or questions in before we wrap up the show today, here with Rod Walker, columnist for the Times-Picayune and the Advocate. Rod and I have known each other for quite a while now. We both covered prep in the same circles when I had left I guess I was with the Picayune and you were with the Advocate, and I don't know. I get confused.
That was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. I moved here in 2013. So. That's
crazy. I mean, we were covering Leonard Fournette and the same. Yeah. I mean, playing high school ball at St. Augustine. I mean, we've been going around circles for a long time. To me, Hendon Hooker comes in, okay? And there's all this talk of the Saints are going to, there's been talk of Hendon Hooker and the Saints for quite a while now. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm not talking about Hendon Hooker himself. I'm talking about the Saints drafting a quarterback in the first 3 rounds when you have so many other needs. Now, for some reason, a guy like that's not going to fall that far anyway. But if you want to draft a quarterback after the 3rd round and have a project and have someone come and be a backup, but to me, and Zach doesn't agree with me, but Jameis obviously wants to be here. Okay, he loves it here for some. I know he wants to be a starting quarterback again someday. I just don't know that spot's going to open up for him. So if you can stay here and be like I hate to put him in the same category as Chase Daniels, but if you can be a solid backup somewhere, first of all, in these days, as a backup, you're going to get playing time somewhere along the way. But if he loves it here and he's willing to play for what they're going to give him, theoretically, you could have Derek Carr and Jameis Winston here for 4 years. I mean, there's nothing that says that you can't. I think there's a decent possibility. So with that being said, why would you go and draft a quarterback, especially a guy like Hendon Hooker, who's coming off an ACL injury, and he's 24, 25 years old, and he's not going to be able to get on the field probably until he's 28, 29 years old.
Yeah, I think with Jameis, man, I don't know what his market was like this year. Like, I don't know if people were blowing his phone up saying, hey, you want to come get us a shot?
Yeah, so, I get that.
So I don't know how long he'll be here, but I mean, if you can get him to stay here as a backup for 3 or 4 years, or, I mean, like you said, I mean, there's a chance that quarterbacks get hurt. I mean, it happens. We've seen it. We've seen it here. And, James may get his shot and do really well. But if he does that, I mean, what does that mean for his future? Maybe some teams, okay, you know what? Maybe James does still have something left in the tank and he gets a shot. So I don't really think I think bringing Hooker in, you get a good evaluation of how his knee is doing. And, I wouldn't draft him in the first or second round, I don't think. But I think they do have a third round pick, the 71st pick. I mean, if he's still around then and you've already gotten a good defensive lineman and a good running back with your first two picks, I mean, I don't think he'd be a bad choice.
I don't disagree with that. If he's still there at 71, because I do think that he can be a starting quarterback in the league. Now, it bothers me that we've only really seen one full season from him. And again, the age factor does make a difference. And you start looking at guys like, Max Duggan from TCU. Is he going to be a starting quarterback in the league? You're going down the list a little bit, but, those kinds of guys. Is that, everybody wants to talk about Caleb Williams next year. And, I mean, but you still don't. You never know. You never know, Rod. You talk about these quarterbacks, and you never know if they're going to pan out or not. You just don't know.
Yeah, it's a very hard position to pick. I mean, there are only 32 of them, and there's a reason. I mean, 32 starters, in that position, and so yeah, you don't know, especially a guy like you said coming off of an injury like he is. But I think that's why you bring him in, though. I think you get a chance to, answer some of those questions that you may have. I mean, there probably are some questions that you want to see if you can get to the bottom of them, and if you like it, and if he's a player they really like. I mean, we know how the Saints are. If they like you, they're going to go after you.
That's definitely true. They do that. Brian, who's been with us all morning, we appreciate it. He says we both have seen him. He's the beer man, walking up and down the aisle saying hot beer. We don't hot beer. I don't know about that. He's passing in the Dome and in the arena and Jazz Fest, many events. Brian, bless you as well, my friend. Happy Easter to you as well. We appreciate you being a part of the show and coming in. Also, he says he's a disabled vet, no longer able to work. We thank you for your service. We thank you for joining us here on Dattitude. All right, Rod, closing thoughts here before we say goodbye on this Good Friday morning. What are you going to be looking for this weekend? I guess the Pelicans are number one, but there's so much going on. I mean, I was watching last night for the first time all year, Brian Scaines, the pitcher at LSU, kind of faltered a little bit. Came into the game with like a 0.94 ERA, gave up his first 2 home runs. South Carolina can really hit the ball. They're going to be fun to watch. Tulane got a big win, and they've had a rough start, but they can still get back into things. UNO's looked okay in college baseball, but we never even talked about the LSU women. Obviously, the story, not just the story of Louisiana, but kind of a story among the nation. And it's great to see women's basketball, to me, getting to that next level. What are some of your final thoughts before we go off the air this morning? I just threw a lot at you.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really kept up with baseball. I did see that. I saw the LSU score last night, and lost the series open. I think it didn't have a rain delay or something, and
they did.
You had to pull the pitcher, and that kind of ruined that night thing. Just kind of went south. But this is the LSU team that I think is, the few times I watched them, and I really like to watch them because I got a chance to cover Trey Morgan in high school, so I love to watch him play.
So do I.
I prefer to watch
Cade Beloso too, who hit a home run last night.
Right. Okay. Yeah. For John Curtis. Yeah. I really like to see Trey when he's playing first base better.
So do I.
He's just so amazing over there. He makes some incredible plays. But as far as the LSU women's game, I was way more in tune to that than I was to San Diego State and UConn. I mean, I was like pretty locked in on that LSU game.
So was I.
Caitlin
which
Clark
is surprising.
Phenomenal to watch. And, the ratings they had, I think they drew like 9.9 million viewers, which is the most ever for a women's basketball game. And
I think it was the most ever for a women's amateur event.
Yeah. And I mean, Caitlin and Angel Reese will both be back next season.
That'll be drama.
Yeah, neither one's eligible for the WNBA draft. So, I mean, we'll be watching both of them next year. I mean, if there's anything close to a Bird versus Magic in women's basketball, this is probably it. So they're both must-see TV. So
what the best part about that is to me is the NCAA. You know as well as I do, these things happen. The NCAA is going to do whatever they can possibly do to make sure that those teams play again, and if they can get it to happen in the championship, they're going to. So they'll be on different sides of the bracket, and I know we're like putting the cart way ahead of the horse. But they're going to do those two teams are going to get whatever breaks that you see the teams get breaks, because we all know they do. I mean, let's be realistic. We saw UConn women get breaks for years. And by the way, Gino's crew is the favorites already for next year. But they'll be on different sides of the bracket, and they won't have to play into the end. But it's going to be high-stakes drama if they do have to meet again. I wish we could find a way for them to play in the regular season.
Oh, I think we can. I think they need to play a tip-off classic in the Dome or in
100%.
In I don't know.
You would absolutely pack the Smoothie King Center if you put those teams to start in some kind of tip-off classic or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. I
don't think you'd fill like a dome or anything, but I think you would certainly fill the Smoothie King Center. And I think I'd go as a fan if I wasn't doing it as a work capacity.
I think you could fill up almost any arena. I don't think it even has to be in Louisiana. I think you could do it in. I mean, I think especially Caitlin. I think she's that kind of a draw now. I think people would. I saw the story the other day. I think I was having to change their season ticket plan because the demand is so
really.
High. Yeah, I mean that's
and we saw the PMAC was packed. There were way more fans there for women's games than there were for men's games.
Right.
We'll see if that changes next year.
It was the same way for Mississippi State when their women were on their little run. I mean, they were outdrawing the men. So I mean, it happens, and especially when you have some really good players.
So you're saying there were 1,000 fans in Starkville for the women and 500 for the men?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a little grief. Got to get my little Mississippi State shot in whenever I can get it. Rod, thank you for joining us on this Friday morning. What have you got planned for Easter weekend? Are you going to just take a break, or
you can't really take a break? The Pelicans play Friday. I think I'll have to cover the Crescent City Classic 10K on Saturday.
Do you?
It's kind of always I've covered it every year. I've kind of written a column, and you see how people
in
cross
bunny
the finish
suits.
line in it's actually a fun event, and it doesn't take long. So then the Pelicans play Sunday night. So I mean, it's a pretty full sports weekend. Not Sunday night; they play Sunday afternoon at 2:30, and obviously that game is going to have some big implications, which we talked about earlier. It could be them battling for the 8th spot probably. So.
Believe it or not, I ran in the Crescent City Classic 5 years in a row. In the late 90s and early 2000s. I know if you look at me, it's hard to believe it. And I did it as recent as I think 5 or 6 years ago. My wife and I did it together, and I actually ran too. And I know it's hard to believe, but it is a fun event. And for those who haven't done it, it's always fun to go out there. I forgot to even mention that as one of the big events here in the city with all the things that are going on. It's just crazy in New Orleans this time of year.
It is.
It makes you realize this is why we don't want to live anywhere else.
Right. I mean,
why would
the year goes by so fast because there's always just an event like, okay, I got to look forward to Jazz Fest. I got to look forward to Essence Fest. It's just always. It's like
If you can't find something to do here, you probably should go live in like, I don't know, Kansas or Oklahoma where it's super boring. No offense to you people who live in Kansas and Oklahoma, but I mean, if you can't find something to do here, you got real problems. All right, Rod Walker, we're going to talk to you again soon before the summer, and as we start looking ahead to, we'll be getting into mini camps before too long. We'll be getting into training camps. We were all talking about wins and losses and what our thoughts were. Wins, we were all wrong when it came how many games the Saints would win, but
I was wrong. I was more wrong than anybody. But
you were wronger, yeah.
Wronger. As wronger as my grammar right there. So yeah.
Well, you listen to me for about 30 minutes and you realize how many I can say in a half an hour. We'll talk to you soon, my friend. Enjoy the weekend, and don't be too busy. Make sure you make some time to get some good food or something.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. We will talk to you later, and we appreciate everyone joining us. As I said, if you didn't get enough of me and Rod, you can come in about an hour or so. It will be wherever you get your podcast with my monologue attached. I promise you I won't be complaining too much about the DMV or talking about, I've been complaining a lot lately. I don't know what's going on in my monologue, but we're going to have fun with it again. We hope everyone has a great Easter weekend, and we'll talk to you next Friday here on the Dattitude Podcast. Thank you for joining as always.